a junior at Gonzaga University. I am studying English and secondary education, which leads me to be concerned with our youth in our communities.
Hi, my name is Anastasia. I'm a senior at Lewis Park High School. I'm a youth organizer for the Peace and Justice Action League, and I would identify as agnostic.
Hi, my name is Jasper Wilson. I'm a senior at Washington State University. I'm involved in a lot of environmental work, and I'm Jewish.
Hi, I'm Taylor. I am a sophomore at Gonzaga, and I do a lot of volunteer work with the intellectual and disabled community of Spokane. And I'm agnostic.
Thank you so much. I'm going to ask a question that might seem a little vague at first, but I think it's a great opening. What does the world look like for you? And what are some of the issues that concern you, not just the ones that you volunteer with, but especially those, and why do they concern you? What is it about those issues that concern you? You don't have to go in any particular order, you certainly can. I go in the same order, but we'll mix it up a little bit if we can. Why don't we start with Taylor?
I have a lot of hope for it, but I definitely do see a lot of challenges that are in the world currently, especially when it comes to my main focus, which is the disabled community. I feel like oftentimes they are pushed to the side or forgotten about in the Spokane community and in the community of the world in general, but it's mainly in the Spokane community, because there's a large group of IDD individuals that I feel like don't get recognized as much.
I think that the biggest thing really challenging us is environmental issues, but I also think that's interconnected with everything. I mean, that's a societal issue, and a lot of the ways that we looked at certain communities also reflects how we look at the environment and how we interact with each other. It's reflected in everything, and so I really think it's just all interconnected. But for me personally, the area where I really focus is the environment, because it's the thing that's scariest to me when I look to the future and I see all these issues that we're facing, and it gets hard to have that hope if I'm not doing something to work towards it.
So when I look at the world, right now, as I do have a lot of hope, I also view it as very fragmented and disjointed. I think we're seeing an increase in isolation and a decline in strong communities. And as well, we're seeing more broadly escalation of global conflict and existential issues such as climate change. But what really bothers me is this decline in strong communities. Because when we lose community, we lose so much else. It's a cascading effect. Because community teaches us to have empathy in each other. And I think also lack of community makes people search for community online, which can be a good thing, it can be a detrimental thing as well. I think it can lead to echo chambers online and people becoming radicalized online as well. And if you don't interact with people on a daily basis with different values and different experiences than you can lose that empathy. And that's what really scares me the most.
I forgot to mention I'm Roman Catholic, and I would say that I have a pretty strong faith, which really guides me, and I know we'll get to that a little bit later. But because of my faith, I'm very people-oriented, so having strong relationships is very important to me, knowing who God is, who I am, and how our world works. I'm often told that as a future educator, I'm in the relationship business, and because of that, I do everything that I can to make sure that our communities are strong. But I would also say, honestly, that lack of community is, very evident today for a lot of different reasons. I'm very concerned about our youth and different communities that I've worked with in our youth.
Can you talk maybe for a second about that for a minute or two? In terms of, is this a generational thing? What do you think are some of the really deep reasons for that? Speaking out of your own generational context.
Sure, yeah. I see it especially in my generation, but I think it's been an increasing thing. I think we are becoming more alienated from each other. I think it's really easy for my generation to isolate themselves because if you go online, you can think you're not isolated, right? Because you can think, oh, I have community online. And yes, that is a community, but it's also important to have community in real life as well. It's not a substitute for real life community. And I think that isolation really breeds it's a vicious cycle in a way. When you are isolated from your own community and you have a lack of empathy for others, you're just going to become more and more isolated because you don't want to interact with other people. And I think a lot of online communities, like far-right online communities, are based on fear, whereas I think communities should be based on trust and companionship. So these communities, I think, these far-right communities online, I think they intentionally make their group isolated in a way to even breed that vicious cycle for more.
Thanks. And as you're talking about social media and how the populations you work with use social media and how they're affected by it, I'm also just wondering how you all use social media with regard to the work that you're doing. I mean, and it has working with other people changed the way that you approach social media or use social media.
I'll use social media to tear other people down instead of trying to lift them up, and like the IBD community, social media will. So I guess that's kind of how I try and use social media, is to interact with those that maybe don't get that much of a positive interaction out in the regular world. Because sometimes social media is all that they have when they're not in a group setting with other people.
This past year, so it's a bit of a hard question to answer. But my organization that I work with, the Peace and Justice Action League of Spokane, uses Instagram to promote things, to promote other organizations. So I do look on Instagram to see what has been promoted, other events that might be interesting that I wouldn't have heard of anyway. That being said, I really don't really go on social media all that much anymore. I try to limit myself to, I have a set time, so only 15 minutes on Instagram per day, so I don't really use it that much anymore, but I do use media in other ways. For example, Range Media is a really great website and organization that I've been looking to for my local news, and that's been really helpful.
You might have noticed when everybody introduced themselves that we have a really interesting dynamic here. We have two of our participants who identify with a religious tradition and two participants who don't identify with a religious tradition. And I have to say that in actuality, that's fairly representative now. You know, it's not something that can be, oh my goodness, you know, where's everyone going to church these days? But I think that the studies show that the religious faith mean to you, and how is it related to like your current the things that you're interested in? And I thought, if it's the case that somebody doesn't have a religious identity, that doesn't necessarily mean faith is not important. So the challenge is like, what is faith mean to you? So for those of you who don't have a religious background, what is faith in a non-religious context? Have you given that some thought, and how is that related to your concerns and work? And for those of you who do have a religious faith, I wanted to add the kind of nuance, like, what do you like about that? What does that give you? And maybe what's the problems with that as well? So I know that's what
I impressed Professor Wendlinder. She was my teacher last year. So Christianity has many different branches, and so what we learned in my class with Dr. Wendlinder is Christianity is like a big pie, and there are different slices to it depending on your denomination. I hope I get an A+ for that.
Let's see.
So growing up for the first 8 years of my life, my family and I were non-denominational Christians. And then when I was 8, I was baptized into the denomination of Catholicism. So I've been Catholic since then. For my faith, I had grown up in a family with a very strong emphasis on faith. And so what that's meant for me is right relationship with God. I believe that if I can have a strong relationship with God and have a right relationship with God, then I'm able to portray that relationship in a way that's beneficial to everyone. So when I'm doing well in my relationship with God, I'm doing well in my relationship with all of you. And I always try to work on that, but I'm definitely not perfect. One thing about a relationship is it takes two people to argue. And And at the end of the day, you're going to make up for whatever reason that you were upset. Say, I understand even if I didn't then, or even if I don't understand, I still love you. So, in having that great relationship with God, I think that's hopefully helped me have a better relationship with the community and for the world, and just being in who I am.
It's kind of, I know lots of Jews that don't even believe in God, and that makes them no less Jewish, and so I think it's a very different idea here. I would never say that, like, my faith in anything has wavered. I go back and forth on everything. I don't consider myself to have faith in a very religious sense. I kind of agree that I have faith in humans and that we'll do the right thing, but I don't think that is connected to a religious aspect in the same way that I think a lot of people sometimes maybe assume it should be, since I'm Jewish. And I feel like, I don't know, for Judaism, for me, it's not like a choice. It just is something that I am, and I will always be, no matter what I do. It's just like a central part of me.
As I said before, I am agnostic. I always grew up agnostic, didn't really have much religion aspect in my life. I think the closest I would have is Buddhism. I always carried around this giant Buddha as a kid. It would come everywhere with me. Not really sure why, but I'd chuck it everywhere. It'd come in the bed, the kitchen, basically anywhere. But faith for me it's not really a religious aspect to it. It's kind of like how Ellis was saying. I associate faith with hope. I associate those really closely. I think, because I'll say like, oh, I have faith in you, and it's kind of just like, I have hope in you. Like, I know that you're gonna do good. And the community that I work with are very religious, or they have very like religious undertones and a broad variety of religions. So oftentimes, faith for them is just believing in something so hard that it moves their soul a lot. And I really like how they kind of go about that, and I feel the same way. Faith is just, I believe in something it drives my soul. And for me, it's not necessarily a God of some sort, but I'm still open to the idea and learning, because I have a lot of life to live and a lot of life to learn. But faith for me is just believing and hoping.
Thank you all. You all get an A+ in the class that you're taking. I feel like sometimes the students come into class already like having integrated the things that I wanted to partake, so I'm always very blown away by that, and blown away like Taylor, I loved your Buddha image there, and I can't quite get that out of my head. I have to see this thing. But the question is, I talked a little bit with you earlier. What would a spiritual practice look like? Because I think it's a really something that we may be thinking about generationally as we move on. We just had a student in class who said, "Well, what happens if religion goes away?" And I thought, well, I wouldn't have a job, but there's a probably more important aspect to that question. Like, if you were looking for a spiritual practice that kind of corresponds with your social engagement, what might that look like? And so this is addressed mostly to Ellis and Taylor.
So I don't have a hardline checklist of things that I would want religion to fulfill, but I think, that being said, I want that religion or faith to be in line with my own values of believing in human decency and believing in an activist work, but I don't have any like hardline checklist. I think once I find that faith structure, I'll know, which is very vague, but I think it will just click.
Kind of the same for me. I feel like if there's a certain set of values that I like, and it's human decency, supporting and caring for the whole soul and the person, and not like trying to put them in a box, which oftentimes I feel like happens in certain types of religion or just in society in general. And it's definitely kind of just being kind to everyone, trying to like make everyone welcomed and not discriminate against someone just based on how they look, what they do. Certain types of like different thinking that may happen, especially within the IDD community. They may not go about things the same way that able-bodied person would. So I think just trying to find a religion or faith that kind of tries to align with some of the views that I look at in the world.
Thank you so much.